Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. This is Mike, and welcome to episode 4 on my PowerShell Build a Script series. In here, we'll be talking about creating a PowerShell module. So we'll look at how we make a completed script look like other PowerShell commandlets, and how to automatically load into a PowerShell session. Okay? So let's switch over to our lab environment here. And if you've watched any of my recent Build a Script series, you know that I have 3 episodes so far. And basically, I have the different scripts up on the screen right here. So this is the one I made for episode 1, which was querying for help desk info. Episode 3, where I did a quick one here on how to write a script to unlock an AD account and all the steps that go with it. And this one here from episode 2, which was querying a computer for finding file information, finding old files, finding large files, things like that. Now, so when you have the standalone scripts, so let's say if I open a PowerShell session and I browse over to the directory where those scripts are, and I go ahead and let's say I want to run one of them. So if I wanted to run, let's say the file demo, right? So when I go ahead and I type it in here, the first thing to understand is with PowerShell, when you're running a script, if you don't have a file path on there, PowerShell is just not going to like it. Okay, so you need to have the file name, the extension, and a file path if I wanted to run that. So you could put in like a full-blown file path, like I could do c:\data backslash file demo1, and I could run it that way. Or if your prompt is at the directory where the script happens to reside, what you could do is just do a relative path. So do a dot backslash, something like that. Now, with this, it doesn't look like obviously commandlets, if you will. Okay, so standalone scripts, they have to be called with a full file path. Right? Now, the other thing that we have here is there is a problem with the scripts that I put together for episode 1 and episode 2. And the problem is that in my parameter block, I'm creating an object out of the Microsoft Active Directory Management class, creating an AD computer object. Okay, now PowerShell doesn't know that ahead of time. So if I don't do anything else ahead here, if I try and just run file demo, you'll notice you get this unable to find type error message, right? Which is not necessarily, obviously what we want to have happen. So, but notice though, if I in my script here, if I go ahead and, or in my PowerShell session here, if I import, if I do import module Active Directory and then run my script, notice we don't get that error. So I'll give it the computer name and let it do its thing, right? Um, so it ran fine. So what was going on here? Well, by importing this module, you're basically letting PowerShell know about this namespace and all the classes that are underneath it, right? So without basically turning it into like I don't know, like a .NET party here, when you first run a PowerShell session, it has some .NET namespaces, classes, and objects loaded into it by default. And the Active Directory stuff is definitely not, part of that. So it's a lot of classes that deal with just generic PowerShell operation and things to manage the operating system itself, right? So there's no classes loaded for like SQL or Exchange or Azure or Office 365 or Active Directory for that matter, right? Now, when you're running the commandlets that come with the different modules, like the Active Directory module or the Exchange module or what have you, those modules, when you kind of run a commandlet out of them and the module gets loaded, the appropriate .NET information gets loaded into the PowerShell session as well. All right. So we don't typically have to worry about that. And for those of you that may not be too solid on what a module actually represents, it's basically a collection of commandlets that are present on a particular computer. So you could see what modules are present on a computer by typing in a PowerShell session, get module, and then list available. And give it a moment, and that will basically list everything that happens to be available here. So, so if you look at these directory paths, we could see modules that are in there. So for this particular directory path, there's these modules that are here. So this PowerShell operation, package management, pester, PowerShell get, PS readline, and unlock are modules that are in there. If I look in where PowerShell is installed, PowerShell's installation directory, and then the modules folder underneath that, we could also see what other modules are available there. Right? Now within each of those modules are a certain amount of commandlets or functions that are available with it. Okay, so like for instance here, notice like there's this branch cache module. So if I wanted to see what happened to be in it, I could go down to my console here and type get command and module branch cache. And that would show me what commandlets are available within here. Right? So you could do that with any of those modules. Right? So once PowerShell knows where a module is, and basically this is an environment variable. Right? This is how you tell your operating system, or your operating system gets told where modules are through an environment variable. So if you enumerate that, so let's grab the environment variable PS module path. We could see what places by default PowerShell is looking for modules. Right? If we wanted to see where PowerShell is kind of keeping an eye at. So the first one is basically the documents folder of whoever's logged in at the time. So I'm logged in as an account called administrator, so it's looking in administrator documents, right? So it's also looking in program files, Windows PowerShell modules, and the System32, your Windows directory, System32, Windows PowerShell v1 modules as well. Right? So that's where it's kind of hunting for modules. So everything it finds there, it kind of lets the PowerShell session know about that. Now the modules have not been loaded into PowerShell's memory though, not all of them anyway. So when you first start up a PowerShell session, so I really haven't done anything in here, so let me just close that, open a fresh one here. If I type get a module, this is basically all that's open to start with here, right? And then if you use different commandlets out of different modules, as long as they're in a path that PowerShell knows about, and again, that path can be updated. So if you install other management tools like maybe SQL or System Center or something like that, they may add more paths into here. Okay? You could also manually yourself add more paths into here as well if you want PowerShell to look in other spots for where modules might be found. Okay? So if we notice here PS read line, and if I kind of do it again, you'll notice because I kind of did something, PowerShell loaded a couple other modules here as well. Okay. Now let's say I run an Active Directory command. Let get 80 user, user one. Right. And if I go back and run get module, you'll notice that now the Active Directory module is loaded as well. So provided the module's in a path where PowerShell is going to know about it, you run a commandlet out of that module and the module will be loaded automatically, right? And then everything else that goes with that module will happen as well. So if there's any .NET classes or namespaces that have to be loaded, any I don't know, assemblies or types or anything else underneath that PowerShell needs to make that module and the commandlets in it function, that'll happen. All right. So now why am I talking about that? Well, what we need to have happen in the scripts that we put together, that I put together, um, since I'm calling this, since I'm making this kind of parameter that takes this kind of object, unless the Active Directory module is loaded ahead of time, this would error out. Okay, so you saw earlier where the script just didn't run. And then I imported the Active Directory module, and then the script ran fine. Okay, that's because the loading of the module uh, lets PowerShell know what type of object this is. Okay? So the problem is, what if someone just opened a PowerShell session, ran the script, there's no way to load the module like in the body of the script. Like let's say if I put a line here, like import module Active Directory, there's no way to make this run before the parameter block gets evaluated. Okay, so when you run a script, the parameter block gets evaluated before the body of the script ever runs. And if PowerShell doesn't know what type of object this is, that's where that error gets thrown. Right? So how can I stop that from happening? Well, if you want to leave this as a standalone script, your kind of options are limited. Okay? I'll be fairly honest here without getting into, again, becoming like, more .NET development type of knowledge here. So what we can do though is once we're done with a script and we're done with maybe multiple scripts, it might make sense to put them in our own module. And then when you make a module, you can define other parameters around that module. Like, hey, when this module loads, I want you to load the Active Directory module as well. Something like that. So that's what I'd like to do here is basically put together a module of the 3 scripts that I've completed through the first 3 episodes of this series here, the Build a Script series. Okay, and probably I'll add more into this as I add more episodes onto the Build a Script series. Okay, so the first thing we need is we need to know where to go put our module. So typically with me, I tend to use the program files path. Okay, extra modules you add from like the PowerShell gallery or stuff like that also use program files. Right? So it's kind of a decent place to go put something, if you will. I try to avoid putting things in the Windows directory. That's kind of where Microsoft puts their stuff, and I don't potentially want to risk, let's say, a service, I don't know, a patch or a hotfix or something like that, maybe wiping out my stuff or something like that. So I usually tend to stick with program files if I just want to use one of the default locations. Right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into C: program files, Windows PowerShell modules. Right? Now for each module, it has its own folder. So if I look at the pester module here, I can open it up and I can see a version and I can see all the support files that go with this module. Right? And different modules will be set up differently. If I look at PowerShell get, I can see the support files that are in there and so on. Right? So for each module, it gets a folder. So if we're making our own, we need to make a folder here. So I'm just going to go up, make a folder, and I'll just keep it simple and maybe just call it tools. Right? The name of the folder is going to be the name of your module. Okay, so if you want to call this, I don't know, some other name, obviously remember that the name of the folder is going to be the name of your module. Right? So now with that being said, I'll come back into the ISE here and I'll open up a blank script and I'm going to go do a save as and I'm going to go save it into that area. So I'm going to go C: program files, Windows PowerShell, modules, tools, and I'm going to call it tools.ps M as in Mary or M as in Mike 1. Okay? So you're making a PowerShell script module file. That's really what you're doing there. And then what you're going to do is you're going to add in each of your completed scripts as a function in here, right? So let's say like I'll take this first one here, which was finding old or big files. Let's say let me grab the code for this. Control A, Control C to copy, and then I'll go over to the tools file here, my tools module, and I'll paste that in. And then what I want to do is I want to wrap this inside of a function block. Right? So I'll use the word function at the very top, give it some type of functions, probably give it a PowerShell style name. So it queries something, so maybe I'll use the get verb, and then I got to call it something. So whatever the noun might be. Um, so maybe, trying to think what I want to call this here. Get, actually, let me use, instead of get, let's do find, right? Find old or big files. Fools files. There we go. Okay, so old or big files. Let's say that's going to be the name of my function, right? Laugh all you want. It's my function. I guess you can name it whatever you want, right? Then I'll open it up, open a curly bracket open like a script block, and then wrap the whole thing inside that script block, right? So and I'll put close function, so I know what that is. Put a comment on that, like so, right? So that would now be the first function in this module, right? And then I can keep repeating this. So let's grab the unlock one here, right? So Control A, Control C to copy, go to my module, and then go down to the next blank line here, paste it in, and then we're going to wrap it inside of a function. So function, whatever the name is going to be, so maybe unlock, and I think of something that doesn't conflict. Let's say unlock users, right? Open that up, and then we'll close that down there, and we'll put a comment, close function. So I know what that particular one is. Right? And if you want, feel free to take all the content inside and tab it in one level so it's easy to tell where the function begins and ends vertically, right, if you want to do that. And then we got one more. So here's the script from episode 1, which was doing the help desk query. So again, Control A, Control C to copy it, go in here, start again on a new empty line, paste it in, right? And then we'll again wrap a function around this. So function, and this will be how about get PC info? Because that's really what it does, right? So it goes and grabs a whole bunch of information from a computer, right? Um, so actually, no, yeah, it's not. That's kind of a bad name here. What's this really doing? It's going and grabbing service info. So maybe get. Let's see. What did I make this as? It was finding stopped services. Let's do that. Get stopped services. All right. So that'll be the name of that function. And then I'll go close the function down there. And again, put a comment so you know what that curly bracket is. Okay, so now I'll save this. And I now have that function, I now have this module in place, right? So if I go and close this PowerShell session and open a fresh one, and I'll type get module list available, you'll see that PowerShell now knows about my module. All right, so there's that tools module. So all it is just a single PSM1 file stored in a folder in the right spot so PowerShell can pick it up. And each of my completed scripts is arranged as a function in that module file. Right? So, and you can notice it's seeing those functions. So if I kind of ran get command module tools, it sees my 3 functions that I created. Right? And then I could go ahead and call them. All right, so let's maybe find about get stopped services. Computer PC1. All right, and oh man, we're still getting that type error. That was the whole reason why I started this video, right? So with a module, uh, if you want to get a little more complex with it, a module can have the actual like the actual, let's say, functions in it, like the actual module file, but you can also define what's called a module manifest file, which has other information about the module. Okay, so I didn't make one of those yet, and that's what I need to do. All right. So in order to do that, from the console here, I'll go in and change my location here to that module. So program files, Windows PowerShell, modules, tools. Okay, so I'm now hanging out in that folder, and you can see the one file there. So now I'm going to go make a module manifest. And I do that by typing a new module manifest. The path is going to be my current directory backslash tools, which is the name of the module, dot psd1. It's kind of weird, like, it's module manifest, but the file extension is D, not M. Okay, because I guess M was reserved for the actual script module file. So PSD1, that's going to make the module manifest, and you want to name it the same as your script module file and put it in the same path. Right? So that's why my path is currently at the tools module. Right? So then I'm going to add some other information into this. Now, some of this is optional. You don't necessarily need to do it. So maybe author uh, chassis tac root module. So that's going to be this file right here. Okay. So I'm just going to type in tools.psm1 and tab it, so it'll tab complete it for you. Then if you want to give a module version, you could do that. I do something like that, version 1. Right. And that will go ahead and make that module file. All right, so if I go look, there it is right there, right, PSD1. So now I need to do one edit to it to make something happen here. So if I go and open this up, PSD1, and you could actually edit this in Notepad or Notepad++, or I don't know, whatever your favorite text editor is. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of scroll on down here until I get down to, where the heck is it? I think I went right by it. Okay, so required modules. See that right there. So in here, first of all, this line is commented out. So I need to uncomment it. And then we're not going to load a hash table. So we're not doing that. So we're going to call the Active Directory module, so that PowerShell now knows if I run any functions out of this module, they need the Active Directory module to be loaded as well. And then my scripts will, and my functions, I guess I should say, will not error at that point. Okay, so we'll go ahead, save this. I'll do Control S to save. And then now I'm going to go close the PowerShell session, open a fresh one. And then we'll go, let's do get stop services, computer name, DC1. And notice it runs. All right, let's try the other one there that would error out. Find old or big files. Computer name, DC1. All right, so again, I don't have anything there for it to go grab, but it did not throw that error. Okay, so it is seeing that the functions that are in this module have that dependency on Active Directory. Specifically, if we look again at the functions, um, they're relying on this type of object being available for the function to run. Right? So by making a module, making the module manifest, adding that line in there, uncommenting it out, and putting in required modules equal, and then whatever module you want to be loaded in order for your functions to work. Right? This can make that happen. Okay, so this is kind of, again, taking it the next step. It's going past having standalone scripts like we had here, taking each standalone script, adding it in as a function in a module file, and then building a manifest for that file, specifying things like required modules. There are other things here. You could specify things like commandlets to export that would make it available to the PowerShell session, functions, variables, aliases. So there's a lot of other things you can configure within this module manifest file. Things like if you wanted to do help, so you could download help, kind of like how Microsoft does uh, their their downloadable help, if you will. So a lot of different information that can be added into here. If you don't necessarily know what module you're working with, notice like required assemblies. That would be like what .NET information do I want to load when this module is loaded into PowerShell's memory. Okay? So that fixes the issues by taking the standalone scripts, making them as functions in a module. It fixes some of my issues that I introduced here by having a parameter that takes an Active Directory object, if you will. Right? So that's kind of putting a module together. Right? And we could see here by running those commands, if I did get module, I could see that the tools module is now loaded. What I find interesting is even though the Active Directory module is in the PowerShell session, you don't see it as loaded in here. So, but anyway, but that now makes our scripts now function correctly. Now, the scripts themselves, again, if you still want to leave them standalone, remember you'll still always have that issue. If you open a fresh PowerShell session and run the script, it might error because it can't find that .NET type for the Active Directory computer object. So by taking those scripts, making them functions in a module, and then applying that manifest to say we require the Active Directory module, that makes everything work. Okay? So hopefully that will convince some people to take some of their standalone tools and scripts, which you might have piling up, make a nice module or modules out of it, and that kind of gives it a little more spit and polish and resembling of Active Directory commandlets, which again uh, might be of better use to not only yourself but for other people that you might be sharing your content out with, if you will. Okay, so any questions, feel free to leave me a comment down in the comment section for the video. Um, and if you like the content, again, I hate to keep saying it, but please like and subscribe. It definitely helps the popularity of my channel, and I greatly appreciate it. All right, so we will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.